Imagine this. You're scrolling through old JDM car clips, and suddenly you see this sleek, low-slung Honda coupe that looks like a cross between a Civic Si and an NSX. You think to yourself, wait, what is that? That's the Honda Prelude, the forgotten JDM sports coupe that had everything VTEC four-wheel steering, a double wishbone suspension, and handling so sharp it could embarrass cars twice its price. Yet, somehow, nobody talks about it anymore. In today's video, we're diving deep into one of the most underrated Hondas ever made, the Prelude. We're gonna cover its full history, what made it special, how it evolved across 5 generations, and why it deserves way more respect than it gets today. So buckle up, because this is everything you need to know about the Honda Prelude. Let's rewind to the late 1970s. Honda was on fire. The Civic and Accord were changing minds all over America, proving that Japanese cars weren't just cheap transportation, they were reliable, efficient, and fun. But Honda was missing something: a sporty coupe. Toyota already had the Celica, a stylish, affordable little sports car that was selling like crazy. Honda wanted a piece of that pie, so they decided to build their own version. Chief engineer Hiroshi Kazuma and his team got to work. They pulled the engine brakes and suspension out of the Accord and dropped it into a brand new chassis with a long hood and short rear deck, that classic sports coupe silhouette. And so, in 1978, the first Honda Prelude was born. But here's the truth. The first-gen Prelude wasn't exactly a home run. It looked decent, but it wasn't particularly fast or exciting. It was more like Honda dipping its toes in the water rather than diving headfirst into the sports car game. Even Honda knew it wasn't perfect. The car was basically a prelude to something better. And that's exactly what they went on to build. By 1983, Honda had learned a lot. They went back to the drawing board and completely reworked the Prelude from the ground up. This time they gave it a sleeker lower profile with a more aerodynamic body. The hood was shorter, the roofline was tighter, and the whole car looked like it was hugging the ground. But that design change created a big problem. There wasn't enough room under the hood for the same suspension setup from before. So Honda's engineers came up with something revolutionary: the double wishbone suspension. This system used 2 control arms to keep the wheels perpendicular to the ground, even when cornering hard. It was compact, efficient, and made the Prelude handle like a dream. And that was the game changer. With its new suspension setup, the second-gen Prelude became one of the best handling cars of the early 1980s period. In 1985, Honda doubled down with the Prelude C, the sporty model everyone wanted. It had fuel-injection rear disc brakes and a clean driver-focused interior. The Japanese version made 110 horsepower, while the US got 100. But let's be real with Hondas, it was never about the power. The Prelude wasn't built to dominate in a straight line, it was built to make corners fun. And that's what people loved about it. Honda had finally nailed the formula for a proper front-wheel drive sports coupe. If the second-gen Prelude was great, the third-gen took it to a whole new level. Released in 1988, the new Prelude brought double wishbone suspension to all 4 corners, which was insane for the time. It handled like a go-kart on steroids. Honda borrowed design inspiration from the upcoming NSX, giving the car a wide, low stance with smooth lines and pop-up headlights. It looked futuristic, confident, and ready to take on the world. Under the hood, the Prelude C packed Honda's most powerful engine, yet a 2.0-liter inline-4, making a 135 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but back then, it was strong for a compact coupe. But what really blew everyone's minds was the technology. Honda introduced something called four-wheel steering 4WS, and no, that's not a typo. At low speeds, the rear wheels turned in the opposite direction of the front wheels, making tight turns and parking effortless. At high speeds, they turned in the same direction, improving stability during cornering. The result, the Prelude could literally dance around corners. Reviewers called it one of the best-handling front-wheel drive cars ever made. By this point, the Prelude wasn't just a sporty coupe, it was a showcase of Honda engineering. It proved that Honda could make a performance car that was refined, balanced, and innovative without needing a massive engine. This generation cemented the Prelude's reputation as one of the sharpest handling cars of its time, a proper driver's car. The early 90s were the golden age of JDM performance. Civics, Integras, Supras, RX-7s, all dominating the scene. And Honda wasn't about to let the Prelude fall behind, so they gave it something special, VTEC. In 1993, the fourth-gen Honda Prelude debuted with the legendary H22A engine, a 2.2-liter four-cylinder that made 190 horsepower, and that was a big deal for the time. Thanks to VTEC, the variable valve timing and lift electronic control, the Prelude had two personalities. Below 5,000 RPM, it was calm and smooth, perfect for daily driving. But once VTEC kicked in, the cam profile switched and the engine screamed all the way to redline. It was addictive. From 0 to 60 came in about 7.2 seconds, which was quick for a front-wheel drive coupe in the early 90s. But again, the magic wasn't in the straight line, it was in the handling. With double wishbone suspension on all corners and a near-perfect chassis balance, the Prelude carved corners with surgical precision. And the styling Honda ditched the 80s boxy look for something rounder and more aerodynamic. The car had a more mature, aggressive presence, like a Civic C that hit the gym and started eating clean. This was the Prelude that a lot of us grew up seeing in Gran Turismo or in old tuner magazines. It became a dream car for many teenagers in the 90s, an attainable mix of style, power, and tech. For many enthusiasts, this was the ultimate Prelude, the perfect blend of analog feel and JDM engineering. Then came 1997. Alanis Morissette dropped Jagged Little Pill. Con Air hit theaters, and Honda released the final version of the Prelude. At first glance, the fifth-gen Prelude looked boxier, almost like a step backward. But don't let the design fool you, this car was a masterpiece of engineering underneath. Honda kept the legendary H22A 2.2L VTEC engine, now making a clean 200 horsepower. And they introduced a new trim called the Prelude Type SH, which stood for super handling. The Type SH featured a groundbreaking system called ATTS Active Torque Transfer System. Now, instead of just relying on traction, ATTS used electronic clutches in the differential to send more torque to the outside wheel during a turn. This helped the car rotate better and made it feel almost rear-wheel drive. In other words, the Prelude Type SH cornered like nothing else in its class. Reviewers were amazed it handled better than most rear-wheel drive sports cars of the time. It was razor-sharp, planted, and genuinely fun to drive. But despite all that brilliance, sales started to fall. The Prelude was becoming expensive, almost $25,000 new back then, which is close to $40,000 in today's money. For that price, buyers could get a cheaper Civic C, an Integra GSR, or even an Accord coupe with similar performance. And when you combine that with stricter emissions rules and changing market tastes, the Prelude just didn't fit anymore. Honda saw the writing on the wall, and in 2001, after over 2 decades of production, they discontinued the Prelude. It was the end of an era. Now, let's talk about why the Prelude deserves way more respect than it gets. For one, it was a showcase of Honda's engineering creativity. Every generation introduced something new, from double wishbones to four-wheel steering to VTEC and finally ATTS. It wasn't just another Civic coupe, it was Honda flexing their innovation muscles. And yet the Prelude was always kind of an outsider. It didn't get the same tuner love as the Integra or Civic, and it didn't have a Type R badge to make it a collectible. But if you talk to anyone who's driven one, they'll tell you the same thing. The Prelude had balance. It had soul. It just felt right. The steering feedback was incredible, the chassis was tight, and it had that old-school Honda magic light, nimble, and begging to be revved out. In many ways, the Prelude was ahead of its time. If it launched today with its mix of analog-feel VTEC power and daily usability, it would probably be a cult favorite all over again. Despite fading from the mainstream, the Prelude has a strong following in the JDM community today. It's one of those cars that you'll see at a meet and instantly get respect for because the people who know. And with prices, for clean examples, still relatively affordable, the Prelude is quickly becoming one of the last hidden gems from Honda's golden age. Sure, it doesn't have the same aftermarket scene as a Civic or S2000, but that's part of its charm. It's different. It's mature. It's a car for people who appreciate pure driving over hype. There's something undeniably cool about a Prelude in perfect condition, the low stance, the VTEC crossover sound, the pop-up headlights of the older gens, or the clean aggression of the Type SH. It's not just a car, it's a reminder of what Honda used to stand for. Now, imagine this. What if Honda brought the Prelude back today? In a world full of CVTs, touchscreens, and fake engine noise, a new Prelude, with a high-revving four-cylinder manual transmission and lightweight chassis, would blow people's minds. It could easily slot between the Civic Si and the Type R, a more refined coupe-style alternative. And considering how many JDM icons have made a comeback, like the Supra Z and Integra, it's not that crazy to think about. A new Prelude could be the perfect bridge between nostalgia and modern performance. Something that honors its past, but takes it into the future. So there you have it, the full story of the Honda Prelude. From its humble beginnings in the late 70s to its peak with VTEC and ATTS, the Prelude represents one of the most important parts of Honda's history, the era when they built cars for drivers, not just consumers. It might not have been the fastest or flashiest Honda ever made, but it was one of the best to drive. And that's what really matters. If you've ever owned one, or even just dreamed about owning one, you already know. The Prelude isn't just a car, it's a feeling.